Gas prices are sitting at $4 a gallon nationally right now, heading into summer 2026. And if you're in the market for a new vehicle, that number is doing something to your thinking, whether you admit it or not. Here's the question I hear more than any other right now. Should I buy a full-size truck or move to a hybrid SUV? And underneath that question is a more specific one that most people don't know how to answer with real numbers. How much does the fuel difference actually cost me every year? And is it enough to change what I drive? Today we're going to answer that with actual math. Not estimates. Not marketing numbers from a brochure. Real-world fuel costs at current prices, real purchase comparisons, and an honest breakdown of who should be in which vehicle and why. Because here's what I've learned after 2 decades working on Fords and watching buyers make this decision. Most people get it wrong in one direction or the other. Some people buy a hybrid SUV and spend the first 2 years wishing they had a truck bed. Some people buy a full-size F-150 and spend $4 a gallon regretting it every commute. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which side of that line you belong on. Let's start with the F-150. Act 1. The 2026 Ford F-150. Why it's still America's best-selling vehicle. The 2026 Ford F-150 has been the best-selling vehicle in the United States for over 40 years. Not best-selling truck. Best-selling vehicle, period. More F-150s sold than any car, any crossover, any SUV, every single year for 4 decades. That doesn't happen by accident. The reason is simple. The F-150 does things that nothing else does, and the people who need those things don't have an alternative. Before we talk about fuel costs, that capability picture needs to be on the table. Because if you need what the F-150 offers, the fuel cost comparison doesn't matter the way you think it does. And if you don't need it, you're paying for capability you'll never use. What the 2026 F-150 actually costs. Base models start around $37,000 to $45,000 depending on trim and configuration. The PowerBoost Hybrid configuration, which is what most of this comparison centers on, starts around $44,000 and climbs from there based on trim. Well-equipped crew cab versions sit between $52,000 and $60,000. That price gap matters, and we'll account for it properly when we run the numbers. The PowerBoost Hybrid, what the numbers actually mean. The F-150 PowerBoost Hybrid pairs a 3.5-liter twin-turbo V6 with an electric motor integrated into the transmission. Combined output is 430 horsepower and 570 pound-feet of torque. Ford's EPA rating is around 24 miles per gallon combined. Real-world mixed driving and independent tests consistently comes in between 20 and 23 miles per gallon. That gap between EPA rating and real-world result is important, and it's consistent across the industry. We're going to use real-world numbers for every vehicle in this comparison, because what happens in actual driving is what costs you money at the pump. The standard non-hybrid F-150 with the 3.5 EcoBoost gets roughly 18 to 20 miles per gallon in real-world mixed use. The hybrid adds 3 to 4 miles per gallon in most conditions. On the highway, the gap narrows. In city stop-and-go, the hybrid's regenerative braking helps it close ground more meaningfully. What the F-150 can do that nothing else can. Maximum towing on a properly equipped 2026 F-150 reaches 14,000 pounds. Even the PowerBoost Hybrid is rated to tow over 11,000 pounds. Payload capacity on a well-configured F-150 exceeds 2,000 pounds. The bed in a standard 6.5-foot configuration gives you 62 cubic feet of flat, usable cargo space with a 2,000-pound floor under it. The Pro Power onboard system on the PowerBoost generates up to 7,500 watts of continuous power from outlets in the bed and cab. That's enough to run a circular saw, a job site compressor, a refrigerator, and charge equipment simultaneously. For contractors, tradespeople, or anyone running a remote job site, this is not a feature. It's an operational requirement. 4-wheel drive is available across the lineup. The suspension and ground clearance handle terrain that stops a crossover before it starts. All of that is genuinely useful. The question is whether it's useful to you specifically. Because if none of that applies to your actual daily life, you're paying for it at every fill-up. Where the F-150 hurts at the pump, at $4.10 per gallon, driving 15,000 miles per year in a non-hybrid F, F-150 at 19 miles per gallon costs you approximately $3,200 to $3,400 annually in fuel. The PowerBoost Hybrid at 22 miles per gallon brings that down to approximately $2,700. Annual savings versus the non-hybrid F-150, roughly $500 to $700. Real money, but not transformational money. The hybrid powertrain on the F-150 is a genuine improvement. It is not a solution to the fundamental reality that you are moving a vehicle that weighs 5,800 pounds. Physics doesn't negotiate. The F-150 is large and heavy, and it consumes fuel at a rate that reflects both of those facts. That's not a criticism. It's a description of what you're buying. Act 2. The hybrid SUV alternatives. What's actually available in the US? Before we go model by model, one important clarification. You may have seen the Ford Territory Hybrid mentioned in comparisons online. It gets impressive fuel economy numbers in the range of 55 miles per gallon equivalent. Ford sells the Territory in the Philippines, the Middle East, and other international markets. It is not available in the United States. If you see it in a comparison video, that video was not made for an American buyer. The hybrid SUV and crossover market in 2026 gives American buyers more competitive options than at any point in the segment's history. Prices have stabilized, fuel economy is genuinely impressive, and the refinement gap between hybrid systems and traditional powertrains has largely closed. These are mature products with 15 or more years of real-world data behind them. Ford Escape Hybrid. The 2026 Ford Escape Hybrid starts around $30,000 to $35,000 depending on trim. EPA rating is 38 to 41 miles per gallon combined. Real-world mixed driving consistently comes in at 36 to 39 miles per gallon, notably closer to the EPA number than most vehicles, because the hybrid system's regenerative braking is particularly effective in the stop-and-go driving that dominates most buyers' actual use. The Escape Hybrid seats 5 adults with reasonable comfort. Cargo space behind the rear seat is 37 cubic feet. With the rear seats folded, you get 65 cubic feet, genuinely practical for the way most families actually use a vehicle day to day. Standard features include Ford's SYNC4 infotainment, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, adaptive cruise control, lane centering, and Ford's Co-Pilot 360 safety package. What the Escape Hybrid cannot do: tow more than 1,500 pounds. It cannot carry lumber in quantity. It cannot run a job site. For buyers who don't need those things, who are commuting, running errands, taking road trips, and occasionally hauling a Costco run, the Escape Hybrid is an extremely capable vehicle for what it actually does. Ford Maverick Hybrid. The Ford Maverick Hybrid occupies a category of its own. It is a compact pickup truck with a hybrid powertrain, and its fuel economy numbers are remarkable for a vehicle with a bed. EPA rating of 42 miles per gallon in the city, 33 on the highway, with real-world combined figures that most owners report in the range of 35 to 39 miles per gallon. The Maverick Hybrid starts around $23,000 for the base trim, the most affordable new vehicle on this list by a significant margin. The 4.5-foot bed handles standard pickup tasks, lumber runs with a tailgate extender, furniture, bikes, camping gear. Maximum towing is 2,000 pounds. Payload is around 1,500 pounds. For someone who needs a truck bed occasionally and wants to commute efficiently, the Maverick Hybrid is a genuinely compelling argument that most buyers overlook. Toyota RAV4 Hybrid. The Toyota RAV4 Hybrid is the best-selling hybrid SUV in the United States, and the reason is straightforward. It balances fuel economy, all-wheel drive capability, interior space, and long-term reliability in a package that has been refined over multiple generations. Starting price is approximately $33,000 to $38,000. EPA rating is around 40 miles per gallon combined. Real-world results from independent testing and owner data consistently land at 37 to 41 miles per gallon. Interior space is 37 cubic feet behind the rear seat and 69 cubic feet with seats folded. Toyota's Safety Sense system is standard across all trims. Reliability data on the RAV4 Hybrid platform going back to the 4th generation is strong. Toyota has been building this specific hybrid architecture longer than most competitors have been selling hybrid vehicles at all. Maximum towing is 1,800 pounds. For buyers who don't tow, that limitation doesn't matter. For buyers who need to move anything heavier than a small utility trailer, it does. Honda CR-V Hybrid and Hyundai Tucson Hybrid. Two more options worth putting on the list for the buyer doing serious comparison shopping. The Honda CR-V Hybrid starts around $33,000 to $38,000 and returns approximately 37 to 40 miles per gallon combined in real-world driving. Honda's hybrid system is smooth and well integrated after multiple generations of refinement. Towing capacity is 1,500 pounds. The Hyundai Tucson Hybrid offers strong feature content at a competitive price, with EPA ratings in the 38 to 40 miles per gallon range. Hyundai backs these vehicles with a 10-year powertrain warranty that covers the hybrid system. For a buyer who is price-sensitive and wants maximum feature content per dollar, the Tucson Hybrid deserves a serious look. Act 3. The real numbers. Fuel cost at $4.10 per gallon, 15,000 miles per year. Let's put the fuel math on the table clearly, using real-world miles per gallon for every vehicle. The non-hybrid F-150 at 19 miles per gallon uses approximately 789 gallons annually. At $4.10 per gallon, that's $3,235 in annual fuel costs. The F-150 PowerBoost Hybrid at 22 miles per gallon uses approximately 682 gallons. Annual fuel cost, $2,700. Savings versus the non-hybrid F-150, approximately $535 per year. The Ford Escape Hybrid at 38 miles per gallon uses approximately 395 gallons. Annual fuel cost, $1,619. Annual savings versus the non-hybrid F-150, $1,600. Annual savings versus the F-150 PowerBoost Hybrid, over $1,000. The Ford Maverick Hybrid at 37 miles per gallon uses approximately 405 gallons. Annual fuel cost, $1,661. Nearly identical to the Escape Hybrid. Annual savings versus the non-hybrid F-150, approximately $1,570 per year. The Toyota RAV4 Hybrid at 39 miles per gallon uses approximately 385 gallons. Annual fuel cost, $1,578. The most fuel-efficient option in this comparison at 15,000 miles per year. Over 5 years of ownership, the fuel cost difference between a non-hybrid F-150 and a RAV4 Hybrid is approximately $8,285. Over 5 years, the difference between an F-150 PowerBoost Hybrid and a RAV4 Hybrid is approximately $5,600. Those are real numbers that belong in any honest vehicle purchase decision. The purchase price gap. Fuel savings don't exist in isolation. They have to be weighed against the purchase price difference between these vehicles. A well-equipped F-150 PowerBoost Hybrid in a crew cab configuration typically lands between $52,000 and $60,000. A well-equipped RAV4 Hybrid in a comparable trim level lands between $37,000 and $43,000. The purchase price gap is approximately $15,000 in favor of the RAV4 Hybrid. If you save $1,100 per year in fuel by choosing the RAV4 Hybrid, over the F-150 PowerBoost, that $15,000 purchase price gap takes approximately 13 years to recover through fuel savings alone. On fuel costs exclusively, the F-150 PowerBoost does not pay for its price premium within a typical ownership period. That math changes if you drive more miles. At 25,000 miles per year, which is not unusual for a primary commuter, these fuel numbers increase by 67%. At 25,000 miles annually, the RAV4 Hybrid saves you over $2,600 per year in fuel versus the non-hybrid F-150. In that scenario, the break-even on the purchase price gap looks very different. Run your own annual miles through these numbers. The break-even point moves significantly based on how much you actually drive. The cost nobody calculates. Insurance, registration, and financing costs all scale with purchase price. A vehicle that costs $15,000 more to buy doesn't just cost more at the dealership. It costs more to insure, more to finance, and the interest on $15,000 at a typical auto loan rate over 60 months is real money. That monthly payment difference shows up every single month for 5 years. Maintenance costs are relatively comparable across these vehicles at lower mileages. At higher mileages, and we covered this in depth in the F-150 engine teardown video, the complexity of the PowerBoost hybrid system begins to add maintenance costs that simpler hybrid architectures like the RAV4 Hybrid do not accumulate at the same rate. None of that makes the F-150 PowerBoost a wrong choice. It makes it a choice that needs to be made with the full cost picture on the table. Act 4. Who should buy what? Buy the F-150 PowerBoost Hybrid if you need to tow more than 5,000 pounds with any regularity. If you're moving a boat, a horse trailer, a fifth wheel, construction equipment, or anything that requires serious towing capacity, the hybrid crossover is not an option. It physically cannot do the job. The F-150 PowerBoost at 11,000 pounds of rated towing is the only vehicle on this list that can. You use a truck bed as a working surface every week. A contractor who loads materials, tools, and equipment into a bed every working day is running a business. The bed, the payload, the Pro Power onboard. These are operational tools, not lifestyle features. The fuel cost is part of the cost of doing business, and the F-150 does that job and nothing else on this list does. Your off-road use is genuine, not occasional. If you're navigating rough terrain regularly, the F-150 with a proper four-wheel drive system is a different category of vehicle than a hybrid crossover. The RAV4 Hybrid's all-wheel drive handles light off-road and poor weather. The F-150 is built for conditions the crossover shouldn't attempt. You need the Pro Power onboard generator capability for remote work or emergency preparedness. 7,500 continuous watts from your vehicle is a genuinely valuable capability. No hybrid crossover on this list comes close to matching it. If two or more items on that list describe your actual life, buy the F-150. The fuel cost is real, but so is the capability you're paying for. Buy a hybrid SUV if your heaviest towing is a small utility trailer, a kayak, or a bicycle carrier. If your towing needs are under 2,000 pounds, the Maverick Hybrid handles that at 37 miles per gallon and saves you over $1,500 per year versus the non-hybrid F-150. You don't need 11,000 pounds of towing capacity if you never approach 11,000 pounds. Your daily driving is your primary use. If your vehicle spends the majority of its time commuting, running errands, school pickups, and weekend trips, you are not using a full-size truck as intended. You are using a full-size truck as a very expensive, very fuel-thirsty commuter. The Escape Hybrid does every one of those things at 38 miles per gallon for $30,000. You're managing total monthly transportation costs. When you add fuel, insurance, financing, and maintenance into a monthly budget, the difference between a full-size truck and a well-equipped hybrid crossover is often $300 to $400 per month or more. Over a 5-year ownership period, that is $18,000 to $24,000. That number is not abstract for a buyer watching their monthly budget. Your family fits comfortably in a midsize crossover. The RAV4 Hybrid seats 5 adults with real cargo space. So does the Escape Hybrid. The Maverick Hybrid seats 5 in a crew cab with a bed. If your daily life doesn't require seating for 6 or 7 people, the crossover handles the family transportation requirement without the cost of a full-size truck to do it. The middle ground nobody talks about. Here's the argument that doesn't get made often enough. The F-150 PowerBoost Hybrid is genuinely the best middle ground vehicle in this comparison for a specific type of buyer. If you need occasional towing capability, 5,000 to 10,000 pounds 2 or 3 times a month, and daily commuting is also a significant part of your use, the PowerBoost Hybrid doesn't ask you to choose. You tow what you need to tow. You commute at 22 miles per gallon instead of 19. You run Pro Power onboard when you need job site power. One vehicle handles the full range of what you actually do. The buyer who pays the price premium for the PowerBoost Hybrid and uses it across its full capability range is getting genuine value from every dollar they spent. The buyer who pays that premium and uses the truck primarily as a commuter is not. The vehicle is the same. The return on investment depends entirely on how you actually use it. Act 5. What gas prices actually mean for this decision. Gas at $4.10 a gallon feels significant, and it is. But let's put it in perspective for a long-term vehicle decision. Between 2021 and 2022, national average gas prices reached $5.17 per gallon. Between 2014 and 2016, they were under $2.50. Gas prices in 2026 are elevated but not historically extreme. For a vehicle you'll own for 5 to 10 years, current prices should inform your thinking but should not determine it on their own. The capability gap between an F-150 and a hybrid crossover doesn't change with the price of gas. The F-150 tows 11,000 pounds, whether gas is $2 or $6. The RAV4 Hybrid tows 1,800 pounds at every price point. Make the capability decision first. Answer this question honestly. In a typical month, what do I actually need this vehicle to do? Not what might I need it to do. What do I actually need it to do on the actual days of the actual year I live? If the honest answer includes regular towing, regular hauling, regular truck bed use, or regular off-road driving, the F-150 is the right vehicle regardless of the fuel cost difference. The hybrid crossover genuinely cannot do those things. The fuel savings don't matter if the vehicle can't do the job. If the honest answer is commuting, family transportation, road trips, and occasional light hauling, the hybrid crossover saves you real money, drives you just as comfortably or more comfortably, and handles everything your actual life requires. The truck capability is sitting there and used while you pay for it at every fill-up. The fuel cost comparison matters. The capability difference matters more. Final verdict. Let's put the full picture together. At $4.10 per gallon and 15,000 miles per year, the fuel cost difference between a non-hybrid F-150 and a Toyota RAV4 Hybrid is approximately $1,600 annually. The difference between an F-150 PowerBoost Hybrid and a RAV4 Hybrid is approximately $1,100 annually. These are real savings. They compound over ownership. The purchase price gap between a well-equipped F-150 PowerBoost and a well-equipped hybrid crossover is approximately $15,000. At $1,100 per year in fuel savings, recovering that gap through fuel costs alone takes over 13 years. The economics of the crossover are strongest for buyers with high annual mileage and no serious towing or hauling requirements. The capability gap goes in the other direction entirely. 11,000 pounds of towing, 2,000 pounds of payload, 7,500 watts of generator power, and a 6.5-foot truck bed. That capability either matters to your life or it doesn't. Here is the honest conclusion. If you need the truck, buy the truck. The fuel cost is the price of the capability. Pay it without regret and use the vehicle the way it was built to be used. The F-150 PowerBoost Hybrid is the best version of that decision. You get the capability without leaving efficiency on the table. If you don't need the truck, buy the hybrid crossover. The Maverick Hybrid if you want a bed and maximum fuel savings. The Escape Hybrid if you want Ford's platform with strong efficiency. The RAV4 Hybrid if you want the most thoroughly proven hybrid architecture in the segment with the strongest long-term data behind it. And if you're somewhere in the middle, occasional towing, daily commuting, truck lifestyle, but not heavy truck use, test drive the F-150 PowerBoost Hybrid and the RAV4 Hybrid back-to-back on the same day. What you feel behind the wheel on your actual commute, at your actual speed, in your actual driving conditions, will tell you more than any comparison video can. Drop a comment and tell me what you drive now and what you're considering. I read every single one. If this helped you think through the decision, the Ford Longevity Blueprint covering ownership costs and maintenance patterns for F-150 powertrains is linked below. See you in the next one.